All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Dane with MLS Technology. Today we're going to be teaching a class on the basics of matrix. So I did want to give you guys a little bit of a rundown on how we do our webinars. This will give our last couple participants a chance to join us as well. So today we're going to be doing everything through the Zoom system. It has you guys on mute by default. What that means is that I will be able to get you guys unmuted if you do have a question. We'll address how to actually do that in just a moment here. We do also have a Q&A section. You'll notice that down at the very bottom of your screen, there's going to be a little bar with the raise hand, Q&A, etc. This Q&A button is where you guys can ask any questions. It does give me a little bit of an indication that you guys have actually asked something, whereas the chat section is actually going to be best used for comments, examples, any stories you guys would like to share, etc. Now, this session is going to be recorded. We'll be sending a link to the class after the class is over. I also wanted to mention, since all of our classes are CE credit now, I also wanted to make sure that you guys are aware if you have any audio or video issues, getting disconnected, can't hear me, can't see the screen, whatever the case may be, please let me know as quickly as possible. If you guys still have access to the Q&A and to the chat, let me know through there. If not, you can hit that raise hand button. Otherwise, if it's truly a severe issue, like you guys are getting disconnected all the time, or you can't even hear me or see the thing, or even hit the buttons, get in contact with us over at the service desk to make sure that we at least know. I want to try and make sure that everybody that's participating in the classes is still able to get the CE credit. So in order to do that, I need to know if there's a problem. Otherwise, we might not be able to give you the credit and you might miss out. Now, the CE credit itself is going to be sent to OREC by the end of the month. There it goes. It's going to be sent to OREC by the end of the month. I wanted to point out, since this is pretty much the second to last day of the month, there is a chance it might take a little bit extra time for these hours to appear, but they should be appearing. All right. I also wanted to point out, again, those buttons down there at the very bottom, the Q&A button. Again, this is where you guys can post any of your questions, chat for any commentary, and then the raise hand option is going to be what we use to indicate whether or not we need to have you guys unmuted. So if it turns out that there's something you guys wanted to ask, but it's going to be a little bit complicated, or you might have follow-up questions, or there's more nuance, or it's just taking a long time to type out, just hit that raise hand button and I can go ahead and ask or answer those questions for you. I also wanted to mention, if you guys are joining us on a mobile device, the layout is going to be just a little bit different. We have the raise hand button over in a different position, chat, Q&A. They all serve the exact same purpose. The raise hand button might just be a little bit more important, since typing things on your little screen might be a little bit frustrating. But again, if you have any questions, problems, etc., just let us know. I did want to bring up our support information. If you guys have any problems, you guys can always reach out to this phone number. They got the email address on there. This is a 24-hour email address. And then we do have our support staff available on the service desk Monday through Friday, 8 to 5:30. But if you guys have problems with your system during this Zoom webinar, make sure to get in contact with us there. All right. Okay. Looks like we only have a little bit left, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the course content. And actually, you know what? While we're waiting, I'm gonna go ahead and launch the poll. So there should be a poll on your screen right now. It's going to ask whether or not you're new to real estate or if you've used Matrix before. Oh, and I should mention, this is actually something that's required for the CE credit, so I do need everybody to answer in order for us to give you guys the credit, or give every individual the credit, I should say. Oh, everybody answered, perfect. All right. Man, still nobody's done the more than I care to admit option. We're gonna get an admin in here someday that's gonna put that on there. So it looks like we got a pretty even split. Half the class is new to real estate, half the class is not. It looks like a lot of you guys have already used Matrix before, and a few of you guys have not. So that's good news. We can go ahead and give things a try then. All right. So starting off, I did want to at least give you guys a little bit of an overview of the course that we're going to be discussing today. The class is 2 hours long. At the top of the hour, we are going to be taking a break, a little 10-minute break, and then we can go ahead and resume. We will need you guys to stick around until the end of class in order to get the CE credit for it. So we're going to get started with how to get into the matrix system. When you guys are on the MLS portals, literally the very first thing that you guys see when you get signed into mlstechnology.com, it's going to be the very first icon here, matrix. Matrix is the essential MLS system. This is the backbone of all of the information that we have in our system. And subsequently, this is going to be one of the most important things that you guys can learn. On the very first page that you guys get signed into, this is what we refer to as the home page. You can also see that right now there's a little line underneath where it says My Matrix at the top. This is also how you guys can get back in there. So you can just click on the My Matrix button and it'll always bring you back to this same home page. Now on the home page that we see here, there's actually going to be a bunch of widgets that are available. You can move these around to your heart's content, except this one up at the top left, news and alerts. This is where you guys will find any announcements that we've made on a just system-wide level. So like, for instance, last year, we ended up making an announcement on the disclosures on MLS. We are finally probably going to be taking this down soon after a year. We just wanted to reinforce that everybody has to make sure that their disclosures are in there. But you'll also see notices up here about maybe listings that are soon to expire. We've got information about the anticipated closing date that'll pop up here. There's a variety of information that is going to show up in this top left corner, but it is locked in place. If I hold my cursor over the gray spot up here at the top, I cannot move it around. But the rest of these items can actually be moved until you guys have it in a position that you like. So all I'm going to be doing is just clicking and dragging from one of the items or from one of the title bars, and you'll notice that it actually gives me a little bit of a cutout of where it's going to be dropped when you let go. Now, in addition to being able to move these around, you can also collapse these. So for instance, if there's things that you guys are not visiting that frequently, so for instance, maybe my favorite searches I'm going to all the time, but the external links, I don't really need this that often. There's other ways for me to get to these other places. I can just hit this little minimize button and it collapses it up into this little title bar for me. Anytime I need it, I can just move it back down. This also moves things out of the way. So for instance, if I collapse the hot sheets, it's going to move my listings space up. Same thing could go for my market watch, just collapse both of those down so that I'm focusing on my listings during the day. And then when I'm searching for buyers, expand those back out again. As well as the listings can, or the widgets can be collapsed, there's also going to be a section over here to the right called additional. If you find that there's something that you guys are not exploring or not using too often, there's going to be a little X option. And what this does is it actually takes the widget off of the home page entirely and puts it onto the additional widget. You can hit that little X, throws that little widget header up into the additional section. And then of course we can collapse the additional as well. So it's a really easy way to kind of tidy up your home screen. If you guys don't want some of the, for instance, they've got some learning information on here. It's great. I strongly recommend this. I've actually been through a lot of this training, but it's also something that you don't need on your homepage all the time. You can just close that out, dumps it under the additional widget, and then I can collapse that so that I just have all the items that I'm actually going to be using on my homepage and no clutter. I did want to point out there's a couple things that I've gotten rid of that you guys might be using frequently or might not know that could be used frequently. Mostly it's the recent one home visitors and recent use contacts. Both of these are actually really going to keep you in line with maybe what's happening with your clients. So for instance, it looks like I got a couple clients that were visiting things yesterday. And then I've also been using a couple of clients down here at the bottom. If I needed to jump back in and maybe interact with one of these clients, I can do so from the home page. We'll be talking about our contacts a little bit later though. All right, so I'm gonna hop back to our home page. And an additional option that we have on our home page is going to be this search function. Now the search function is just really overly basic. I might as well point out that this is actually a tool that you guys can use to just effectively jump directly into a listing that somebody has mentioned. This is a tool that we use very frequently on the help desk side of things. If you guys are getting phone calls from agents offering, oh, there's this listing that's really interesting, your client might be interested in this, and then they just rattle off an address real quickly. This is where you guys can put that information in. There's only 2 pieces of information you actually have to have in order to run this search. First, you've got a house number and the street name. Now, it's important to recognize that the street name in this situation is not referring to North Main Street East or something like that. It's only going to be Main. So in our example, I'm going to do 33200, and it's North 151st Street East, I think is what it was. So I'm just going to put in 151. I don't have to put in the ST or TH or RD or whatever else is going to happen after the numbers. Just put in the numbers themselves and then hit search. And when you guys run a search in this way, oh, it's east and south. I messed it up. But when we run a search this way, what it is going to be doing is actually finding all of the instances of any listing that's ever had that particular set of data. So the house number being the 33200, and the street name being the 151. So notice it didn't have to have the ST on there. In this situation, we do also see a mixture of residential properties as well as land. So we can see that with the property type. And then there's an additional section here for the property subtype. But when we ran this search, I didn't clarify for it that I wanted to have a specific status on there. So what ended up happening is that I just typed this in, and it gave me effectively a history search showing all of the different listings that have ever been put in with those numbers. So I see all of the closed listings, and all of the expireds, and then finally all of the released. If there were any active, pending, coming soon, any other kinds of listings, it'll always be able to find them because we did not clarify the status from that dropdown on the first page. Now, a couple things that I wanted to address before we move on. Over here on the left-hand side, we've got our MLS numbers. We're going to be exploring this a lot more later, but I did want to point out on the MLS numbers, there's actually a little hidden secret in here. The actual MLS numbers are the 5 digits at the end of any MLS number. The first 2 digits are actually what year that listing was entered. Now, you may end up noticing that there's going to be a couple on here that actually have 6-digit numbers. This is indicating that they just dropped a preceding 0. So for instance, this one right up here at the top was actually entered in 2008. Same thing goes with this listing down here at the bottom. This listing was entered in 2007. Since it was just 07 at the beginning, they just dropped the preceding 0 and it became a 6-digit MLS number. All right. Now, we're going to be talking a whole bunch more about search functions a little bit later, but before we actually find anything that we want to send off to any of our contacts that we're going to be using a little bit later, we need to make sure that all of our contact information for ourselves is up to date and ready to go. Up at the top right corner, there's going to be a button here that has your name and then potentially a little arrow to the right of that. It might just be really simple. It might just say your first name, maybe it has both of your names, but it's going to be a little drop down, and then click on settings. From settings, there's going to be a button over to the top left that says my information. When you click on that, it's going to bring up a couple headers here. We've got the information, header and footer, CMA cover sheet, email signature, and one home. We're going to want to make sure that all of this information is ready to go so that if I'm printing off a report, if I'm creating a CMA, if I'm sending off an email, or if they're going to be using that portal, they'll be able to see the correct information. Now, the very first thing that we need to verify is that all of the information on this first tab is correct. And this information here should have automatically been moved over from the membership data. So when you guys first arrive here, this should already have most of your information filled out. And if you guys have been here before, you may notice that there's some sections on here that are already filled in as well. If it turns out that there's maybe some modifications that you want to make that are more just aesthetic modifications, like I just want to change the visuals on this because it's Mike is what I prefer to go by whenever I'm presenting myself to the public. That's what my advertising says. That's what my headshot has written under it, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. If I have my legal name on the membership data, so for instance, if I'm Michael whenever I get billed, but I'm Mike whenever I'm advertising myself, I may end up wanting to hit this override button to allow me to make that change. So again, if you've got, you go by Steve, but your legal name is Stephen, Robert, you go by Bob, whatever the case may be, you guys can make sure that that aesthetic change is put in there. In addition, if you guys notice that there's any errors on here, so for instance, if you get in here and any of this gray locked information that you have to use the override button to even change is incorrect already. So like if it's got the wrong address, the wrong email address, the wrong office, whatever, that means that the information is actually bad on our membership data. The membership data gets updated very easily by anybody on our service desk, and then subsequently gets updated in Matrix pretty soon after. So you guys shouldn't notice too much of a delay, but if you guys find that there's something that's wrong, you got to let us know as quickly as possible, because this is information that's going to be going out to the public whenever you send off emails, whenever you guys print reports off, everything. So once you guys have made sure that all the information that you want to add has been added and all the information that's already present is correct, make sure you hit that save button down at the bottom. And then we'll head over to the header and footer section. Now the header and footer is only going to appear whenever you guys are doing the custom print displays and reports. If you have not been to this page before, there's actually going to be a different screen that you'll see. It's actually just going to show you a bunch of templates that you guys can use. Find one that you guys like. As soon as you have, there's a little button over to the left. Select that and then hit preview down at the bottom. This is going to allow you guys to effectively preview what the print is going to look like, or any of the reports that you guys create will look like. It's also going to allow you guys to make some changes to this a little bit further down. If you guys like the layout that you see here, so I've got my photo over to the left, I've got my contact information, and then whatever the remainder of the header template looks like. This is a great way to put the information together. You can upload a photo that's going to take up that space there. And then you also have the option to change the contact information right here to the left. Just to show how this works, there's drop downs down here, and each of these are tied to the 5 spaces that are available up at the top. So if I wanted to make sure that my cell phone number was right up there at the top, make sure that my office phone number is next, and then of course my mainline number is there. We can put all of those into order. So notice as I've been entering those here, they've been changing the information that appears up at the top. Just as a heads up, they should have the little links written in a different text. This also is something that used to be something digital. So this was actually the portal header whenever people were being sent emails in the past. Now we have that whole separate system. So those links are just highlighted for no reason at this point. But besides that, we do also have the custom banner image. If you guys would like to make a custom banner image that you can use with your company logo or your headshot or whatever the case may be, there is a button there to upload those. And then you can also match any of your corporate branding color schemes by changing this over to use custom colors. A little bit further down, we also have the print footer. I usually just recommend people add whatever information was not included on the header, but oftentimes you can even just turn off the footer, or you can just turn off the footer permanently and save that. But if you do end up making any changes here, make sure to hit save. The CMA cover sheet isn't something we're going to be talking about too much. It's just a section here that's going to be appearing on the official CMA report. We'll see some information about this in our class that we're teaching this afternoon, but not too many people are creating those CMA reports, and this is a pretty basic screen. You just make sure that your information is up to date and you're done. The email signature is actually a very important one, because this is what's going to appear whenever you guys send an email off to a client. I would very strongly suggest, just for branding continuity, to just go into your Outlook, Gmail, whatever you guys are using to do your emails currently, and just copy whatever email signature you're currently using and just paste it in there. That's the best option. That'll make it easier for your clients to see your information and be able to get what they need from that. The next section over is going to be the One Home section. I've already uploaded a photo of myself, and then there's some contact information down here towards the bottom. Make sure that you guys put in any of the information that you would like for the clients to be able to see, because when they get into a listing that you've sent them, there's going to be a little profile picture with your face on it, and then all of this contact information will be available to them. So make sure that this is all up to date. Make sure that you guys mention how to get in contact with you, maybe your level of experience or a little blurb about yourself, how you guys have been faring, whatever. There is a section down here at the very bottom if you guys would like to upload some kind of office introduction, a video interview with you, whatever the case may be. You can use Vimeo or YouTube. This is literally the only place in the entire system that you guys can actually use YouTube links. Nowhere else in the system is it allowed. In fact, in our rules and regulations, we even have a specific mention of this because people were using YouTube to upload the virtual tours, which, if you guys remember, is actually something that has to be unbranded. Just to give a little synopsis of why YouTube, just by nature, has to have had the video uploaded to a channel. Channels are oftentimes going to be branded, even if they were not branded. So even if you just created a really hyper generic YouTube virtual tour channel, any of the information that pops up afterwards, so after the YouTube video is over, could be misconstrued to be something related to whatever you guys had just presented. So we decided as just kind of a complete decision across the board that we're not going to allow it, except for in this one spot, just because YouTube is still something that we recognize as kind of pervasive, and having a branded YouTube channel could be very beneficial to a lot of people. So this is the only place we allow it. All right, once we've gotten all of our information up to date, we can now go ahead and move forward with actually finding some listings and getting that information sent off to our clients. So let's get started with the search function then. Up at the top of the screen, there's going to be a bunch of different tabs. When we hold our cursor over them, there's going to be a menu underneath each of these that's going to allow us to either get to something related to our contacts, the saved searches, auto emails. Some of this information we'll be talking about later. But the search function is going to be a little bit more comprehensive. This is where we're going to find a main search page for both a quick version of the search as well as a create your own option for each of the different property types. So we've got the residential sales, commercial sales, vacant land sales, and then this leasing option is actually a residential lease. It's important to recognize this is residential leases only. Occasionally, we will see some people trying to sneak in a commercial listing under the leasing option, or they'll try and sneak a commercial lease into the commercial sales section. Just make sure to remember these are residential sales up at the top and residential leases on the leasing section. Now, in addition to just the 4 property types, we also decided to include what's called a cross-property search. Now, the cross-property search is very basic. What it's going to allow you guys to do is search for every property type that you would like on one search. That might not necessarily have a lot of practical application to people, but I did want to at least show you guys how this functions. When you guys are signed in here, it's going to allow you to use the property type section to clarify. Let's say I wanted to just see all of the residential sales and all of the vacant land sales in one search. So maybe these are my 2 specialties. I don't deal with lease or commercial too often, and I'm brand new to, let's say, Ada. This will allow me to get kind of a little overview of what's available in the area, both from the residential and land perspective. Now, we are going to be talking a lot more about the search functions later, but just to keep going down the line, we also have a public records search that was recently added. In case you guys are very commonly going over to the realist tax system to try and find tax record information, You can actually do that now just directly in Matrix by using this public record search. We also have an additional agent search. Let's still switch that over. Okay. We also have an agent search on here. The agent search is actually really handy. This is something that those of us on the service desk are using all the time. Whenever we get in contact or have somebody get in contact with us, we'll be looking for their information, trying to find out what their listings are, et cetera, et cetera. In here, you guys can just put in a name. So let's just do Yuri. As you guys start adding in search criteria, it's going to show you how many matches you have. So if you guys are starting to type out another name, but it already has one match, you guys can just jump directly into the results. Now, one of the handy features with the agent search is that once you guys have actually run your search, you can click on their member number, or in this case, member name, over to the left, and you can also see any of their active listings. So when you click on that active listings button, it'll show anything and everything that they currently have available. This is a really easy way to try and find a listing. If maybe you had an agent get in contact with you and they said, hey, your client might really love X, Y, or Z property. You didn't write it down, or you didn't have a piece of paper at the time, or you were driving or whatever. You guys can always go back in, find the person that contacted you, and then see what the listing was that they might have been discussing. In addition to just searching for an agent, there's also an office search. Now, the office search is going to work a couple different ways. If you guys know what the office ID is, so say I've got the specific number and I run my search, you can find the office that way. Or if you guys would like to, you guys can always just use the office name instead. So for instance, we'll just do, oops, I can spell well, Lake, and then I'm just going to add an asterisk at the end. Even while I was typing that, it already got down to one match anyway. But if I go into my results, click on the ID, you guys can see the office agents list, which means that I can see everybody on there. And then we also have the option of seeing the office locations as well. So for instance, if there was any other branch offices, we could see that from here. Just to be clear, if you guys do have a lot of branches to an office, so like let's say I did Goldwell, I got 13 matches. I can click on one of these, see the branch offices from there. It's like Coldwell Banker, Heart of OK, does not have any branches. But if we did Coldwell Banker select, I click on one of these, click on office branches. Oh, I apologize. This is a mistake on my part. You actually have to click on the main office. This is a feature I don't always use. There we go, our branch offices. I might have to double check why that's not functioning properly, because I just tried this the other day with yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. I'm gonna have to find out why Coldwell is not functioning properly. Oh, I apologize about the confusion on that one. That's something we're gonna have to investigate. But anyway, towards the bottom of this, we have a data co-op. We don't cover the data co-op in our 2-hour-long class any longer, but data co-op effectively just boils down to effectively a social network for all of the matrix systems. So CoreLogic is actually the company that developed the system that we use. So Matrix has actually been developed by CoreLogic. What that means is that CoreLogic has actually established a back end for all of the matrix data that's ever been entered into any of the matrix systems throughout all of the MLSs in the entire country. It's effectively a quid pro quo system, meaning that whenever you guys are actually getting signed in here, you're actually going to be able to see all of the listing data for all of the surrounding MLSs using Matrix. So for those of you guys who might be working on the border, over here in Arkansas, the Fort Smith MLS actually is already using Matrix. And as you can see, They've got all of their listings already on here. But this isn't something that we have people use too often. I could just point you guys in that direction just in case you might be interested. There is also a more option down here at the very bottom. You can go to more at the bottom of that list, or even just click on the word search and it'll bring you to a screen that shows all of the search options at once, including our agent, office search, a property history search function, which is now a little bit obsolete. And we've also got an open house search. Open house search is actually pretty handy, especially if you guys wanted to, I don't know, head to Ada, maybe make sure that you guys are going to get some snacks while you're out there and find a house that might be of interest to some clients. But we're going to go in now to the residential quick search. Now, the difference between the quick res and the create your own option, and this is going to be the same for all of the other property types as well, is that the quick version is going to include all of the basic elements that you guys might need to search by, whereas the create your own is literally a blank template. That means that if you guys want to search by a specific status or a specific city, you're going to have to manually add those search fields. We'll talk about how to do the manual add of search fields in just a bit here, because you can actually modify the quick search to include additional fields as well. But just running through some basics on how the search functions. Up at the top left corner, we've got our statuses. The only default option whenever you guys are first getting in to run a search is that it's going to have active checked. Every single other element on here should be empty except for turning your price into the thousands. So this is actually a good default. Make sure to leave that turned on. Underneath the status section, we also have the property subtype. Now, some of the lists are going to be pretty dramatically longer than this. For instance, the commercial and vacant land are going to have a lot more options on here, whereas the residential options are pretty sparse. But nice and cut and dry. We can say whether or not we wanted to get a house. Since this is a list, we can actually also hold down the control key and click on something, and you can select multiple items at once. And then if you guys end up deciding I don't need to narrow down by my property subtype, hold down the control key and select the last item, and you'll notice that it goes back to being white. Anytime you guys have selected an item in one of these lists, it'll highlight that for you. The same thing will be true if you guys end up checking any checkboxes on the statuses, typing in any prices, etc. Now, if you guys are looking for any foreclosure properties or maybe bulk listings, that's going to be down underneath the status and the property subtype down here in the section for just kind of some extra nuance to the listings. Lender owned is going to be for foreclosures, and then multiple parcels is going to be for the bulk listings. Now, just as a heads up, the bulk listings actually can be put in one of two different ways. The primary way to do it, that a lot of people have been doing recently at least, is going to be to put in one listing and then mention whether or not all of the parcels can be split up or anything else. There is also the option to put in an individual listing for each property that's going to be for sale. Even if you can bundle them all together, they have to be bundled together or they can be split off. So it's either or, it's just a yes or no option whenever you guys are entering a listing. Now, the middle section here is going to be where we can choose what location we're going to be searching by. So you start off with a map search button. That's going to be the same thing that you guys would get if you guys hit this map button. But there's also a proximity search. For whatever reason, a lot of people haven't been using this, but I think it's an incredibly useful tool. So for instance, if I wanted to find out what properties are available within a mile of, say, let's just do ORU. So as I'm typing, it may pop up with this little autofill option. It's important to recognize that this is how you actually put in the address. So if I were to just try to run my search right now, nothing would happen. I have to click on this "Did you mean" option, and then it'll say map area selected. Now, if I go to my map, it's going to have a dot in the center of where ORU is, and then a 1 mile radius around it. But we're going to be talking a lot more about the map search in a bit here. There's also a section here where we can search for specific addresses. This is a great way to collect a whole bunch of listings all at once. If you guys have the addresses for them, you can run the search for them. It's broken down into the 6 different elements of each of the addresses: house, street direction, street name, street type, post direction, and then unit number. If you guys are trying to search for a specific listing and it does not happen to be active, you will not be able to find it with this search. You'll have to make sure that you check the checkbox for whatever the status might have been. And that way you'll be able to find all of your properties you're searching for. But if you're just looking for the ones that are still active, you should be set. A little bit further down, we have our school district information. Reset this real quick. School district information as well as city allow you guys to just start typing. So for instance, if I wanted to do the Latta School District, I could just start typing Latta and it automatically highlights that for me. It's important to recognize that this also works the same way that you guys do any other email functionality. So if you guys add in a comma and then start typing do Ada as well, I will now have Ada selected and Latta selected. City works the exact same way. So again, if I just type in Ada, and then I also wanted to include let's do Kingston as well. You guys can include disconnected city information. It is going to do an either or. You can notice that down here at the bottom. And then we also have the option to just click on this little pop-up window. And this pop-up window is going to let us search like this. So when you click on the pop-up, it's going to have the complete list of all of our cities and a search function up at the top. Once we find the city that we're interested in, so we'll do Ardmore in this case, select the option, click Add, and it'll move it over into this current selection section. When we hit OK, it's going to bring me back to the screen and it'll have filled in all of the information up at the top there. Again, right now, this has been highlighted in blue because I have a city selected. As soon as I clear that, it goes back to being white. Clear that, same thing. School district, again, works the exact same way. So if I wanted to do Bixby, select it, click Add, Broken Arrow, select, Add, and then, of course, Tulsa. Add. Hit OK, and it automatically fills all of those in for me. All right. County and zip code also have those same buttons. We've tried to make sure that all of the counties are already added, all of the zip codes are already added. But if you guys ever notice that a school district, city, county, street name, subdivisions are not added in the system already, just get in contact with us over at the service desk. We can help you guys get that information added. And speaking of subdivision information, down here we have a section for subdivision, but I wanted to let you guys know this section does have one little caveat to it. This is going to be an exact search. If I end up typing in Minchell Park, for instance, that is the name of a subdivision, but the subdivision name isn't actually just Minchell Park. That's the sign on the area when you guys drive into it, but the actual names of the subdivisions are going to be Minchell Park 1, Minchell Park 2, Minchell Park Resub 12 of Granite Hill, whatever. So what I'll have to do is actually add in an asterisk at the beginning in case it was the Minchell Park Estates. It'll just ignore the at the beginning. And if I add an asterisk at the end, it's going to ignore any of the resubs, additions, estates, whatever it is afterwards. So this is a great way to make sure that you're searching for your subdivisions pretty well. I did want to point out there are a couple limitations to this. So for instance, if I type in Turtle Creek and I'm thinking of the one in Broken Arrow, when I go to the map, looks like it's in the right subdivision. But if I go back to my criteria, add in pending, closed, and expireds, go back to my map, now all of a sudden that same subdivision is represented, but there's also another Turtle Creek subdivision over here as well. So these listings are not necessarily going to be good for, let's say, doing CMAs, for instance. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But now let's actually talk about these numbers over on the right-hand side. So the price is going to be the one that more often than not is getting used anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show we've got a price range option. So we can type in 100 to 200. That's going to show me only the listings that start at 100,000 and end at 200,000. Again, the checkbox over here to the right will automatically turn whatever numbers you type in here, even if it's a range, into the thousands. We also have the option to do, say somebody has a hardline budget, I can do 200 minus, and it'll say I'm only going to be showing properties that are 200,000, and then with this negative sign, it's or less. We also have the option to do the exact opposite. So let's say I finally get my white whale, I've got some client that's actually ready to go spend $1 million on a property and doesn't want to see anything under that value. So I'm going to type in 1,000 on here. And remember, it's going to automatically add 3 more zeros. This is now $1 million. I see that I've got 5 matches already for $1 million. If I just add in that plus, now it's going to show me all 203 listings that are $1 million. And again, with that plus or more. The bedrooms, bathrooms are going to be something that I think a lot of people are going to be using that plus and minus for more. The minus, not so much, but let's say that I do have a client that says, well, we want to see all of the properties that have 3 or more bedrooms, 3 or more bathrooms. So I've got 3 plus. We'll say that 3 bedrooms as a minimum, and anything that's over that is acceptable. 3 plus. Total number of bathrooms should be 3 plus. And just to make sure that I'm only seeing the properties that actually have at least 2 full bathrooms, I can do 2 plus for that. This will make sure that I'm seeing the properties that have a total number of 3 bathrooms, but if it's 3 full bathrooms or 2 full bathrooms and a half bath, it won't matter as long as there's 2 full bathrooms. Fairly simple. We also wanted to talk a little bit about the house square footage. Now, the house square footage is something that has a couple pretty stringent requirements on it. When you guys are entering listing data into the system, you have to make sure that it is coming from one of 3 different sources. So the house square footage can come from the courthouse records. So for instance, if the data that they have at the assessor's office is correct, you guys can go ahead and use that and import that directly from Realist if you'd like. But if you guys end up having the courthouse records not being correct, you can use the building permit, especially handy for those of you guys who might work with new construction. Additionally, you guys can also use an appraisal. So if you guys have an appraisal done for the property, you guys can use that. The catch with the building permit as well as for the appraisals is that when you guys are actually putting that number into the system, you have to make sure that you have the paperwork to back that up. Now with the courthouse records, we can all go search that in Matrix and Realist. But with an appraisal and building permits, if there is some question to the validity of the square footage that's been quoted, you're going to have to be able to present the information if need be. So this isn't an option. You guys will occasionally end up having some situations where you're looking at the square footage of a property and you're just like, that doesn't seem to add up, right? If you guys ask them for the paperwork on the appraisal or the building permit, it has to be provided, or they can at least provide that information through us. But if the available sources don't have the information that you need, or an appraisal doesn't have, or you guys haven't done an appraisal, or you haven't gotten the building permit, or the building permit is obsolete because they've made additions or whatever, you will have to put in the listing with a 0 for the square footage. We ended up having a lawsuit between a couple of our members a while ago that boiled down to a misquoted house square footage because the owner had given the quote, and we decided that we were no longer going to allow the owners to provide us with that detail. So that's why we have the not reporting and the option to just put in 0 for the square footage if you don't have paperwork that shows the correct square footage. So in our system currently, if I type in 0, we have 195 listings that are currently marked with 0 for the square footage. Now it's important to recognize that this is just going to be kind of an outlier. We have the 3,000, over 3,000 listings right now. So if you guys end up seeing that there's, a very small number of this, you might want to ignore them. But what I would like to point out is that, let's say that I wanted to just search in Ada, for instance. And the client that I'm working with, they wanted to make sure that the listings that they had available were going to be between 2,000 and 2,500 square feet. I'm going to include the 0 square feet ones just to make sure that if there is one in there that happens to be the square footage of the client's needs, I will have to manually go and investigate this and see if they've actually marked the house size whenever they enter the listing into the system. So just to clarify what that means, even if we don't have a valid source and we have to quote that it's 0 for the square foot, you do have the option to put in a house size measurement. Let me see if the other one has this. It does not. Let's go back to my criteria and try. There we go. Let's see. Let's try this one. Hey, there we go. Oh, so it looks like in this case, we actually have 0 for the square footage, but they gave us an estimate. So since it's not a direct quote, it's not going to be false advertising, but they did give me an estimate to at least indicate, all right, 3,250 to 3,500. That's a little bit outside of my client's needs. Go to the next one, not quoted. Next one, way too big. Also, this is a violation. Always has to be the front exterior of the house or an aerial shot. So this is not an acceptable first image. And actually, you know what? Since I really hope this isn't somebody in the class. It is not. Okay, good. If you guys do end up in a situation where you guys have a listing that's got some form of violation on it, or if you guys just suspect that there might be some information that's inaccurate on here, again, if there's a square footage that's being quoted, or you find an active listing that you guys just talked to the client or just talked to the agent and they said it's actually pending and they're not accepting offers, any information that's just bad data, there's a report a violation button here. It's going to have a relatively limited list of subjects that you guys can use. Just click on any of them if you guys can't find one that matches what you guys are talking about. So in this case, I'm just going to mark that it's primary photo. It does indicate who it is that's going to be reporting this. This is not information that the agent will see. This is only information for those of us on the service desk. For all intents and purposes, these violation notices are actually just anonymous. But you can hit submit, get that information sent off. I did want to clarify something with that report of violation. We were actually planning on covering this later anyway, but when you guys are reporting things, I know oftentimes this can feel like, oh, I'm being a narc. I don't want to get somebody else in trouble, whatever. Just remember that this is bad data that's being distributed out to the public. So if there's something that's incorrect about this, or there's false advertising being done, or it's in the wrong status, or they're putting in bad photos, whatever the case may be, just remember that this isn't just reflecting bad on whoever it is that entered the listing. This is reflecting bad on all of us. So we try to make sure that all of that information is up to date, correct, doesn't include any bad information. And also, again, just for continuity, we want to make sure that this one has a accurate photo. This isn't even something that we find people for. I mean, it's just a phone call. We let them know that that's what the rule says, and then we move on with our day after they fixed it. It's really easy. But anytime you guys have those situations arise, please don't hesitate to do the report. Again, they don't know who it was that reported it. We don't ever tell them. We don't even show them that information if we get the opportunity to. It's just completely obfuscated. You guys are reporting things anonymously as far as they're aware. All right, let's jump back to our search. I also wanted to address the additional fields down there at the very bottom. Now, when we're running our searches, again, this is going to include the majority of the things that you guys might want on the quick version. But down here at the very bottom, there's another section here for additional fields. This is going to allow us to actually expand our search out pretty dramatically. So when I click on the add button, it's going to bring me to a list of every single field that we have available in our system. This is going to not just include the things that are currently active, so the details of a listing that you might be working with right now, but it's also going to be any of the details that a listing has along its entire life cycle. So what the pending date was, what the closing date was, what the financing used on the closing was. All of those details will be maintained, and you guys can run searches to find any of those parts and pieces. If it's a piece of information that can be attached to the listing, you can search for it here. Now, some of the information that you guys might be searching for is going to be a little bit harder to find because it might not make sense where some certain things are actually going to be found. So let's just do a quick example. I'm going to pull up something for you guys. When you guys are entering listings into the system, there's going to be a section or there's going to be a form that you guys might have filled out called the property data form. If you go to the forms and contracts option on the MLS portal, there's going to be a section here for MLS specific forms. Under there, there's going to be the matrix data forms. This is a little bit of an old school terminology for those of you guys who have been here for a while. But under the matrix data forms is going to be the different property types. Again, residential, vacant, leasing, and commercial. So it's all in. I am so sorry about the Zoom thing. I got a new computer monitor and it's a little bit larger than I was expecting. All right, so I'm going to be looking at the residential property data form. When we're in the residential property data form, it's going to have little asterisks showing us what things are required, et cetera, but you'll notice that, let's say the house size, for instance. House size shows me all of the different options that we can search for. Got multiple parcels. Remember we saw this. This was actually something that was just on the basic search page on the quick search. And it was yes or no, but the label above it was multiple parcels. This is going to be important in a moment. Let's say that I have a client that wants a gated access community. Now the gated access community might be something that I know already what section to search in, but let's say that I don't. I'm going to go to Control F. This is going to do the search function for me. Control F is going to appear in a variety of different places depending on what browser you're using. In Firefox that I'm using right now, it's down here at the bottom left. In Chrome, it's going to be up at the top right. Safari, it's in a little different spot. Edge, it's in a little different spot. But just as a reminder, we only suggest using Chrome as the primary or Firefox as the secondary. Edge technically will work, but they just recently moved over to the Chromium platform, so there's a chance that you might experience some issues in Edge, but it should work. If you guys notice any problems with it, let us know. Anyway, you do Control F to search, and I'm going to type in gate. And when I type in gate, it automatically found where on this property data form we can find gated access. And the section header, so remember when we were looking at multiple parcels, yes or no, in this case, HOA amenities, and then it shows all of the amenities that can be available for that listing. So now when I go back to matrix, I want to add that field. So I'm just going to do HOA as my search down here at the bottom, click on HOA amenities and click add. Now I'm going to hit this back button just to go back so we can see what we've done. And I can now see that I've got a gated access search. So I've got 148 matches. If I had any additional fields I wanted to add, I could just go back to add and remove. Let's say that I wanted to do now the USDA rural developments. So I know that my client has some financing available for that. So I can go under finance options and see the USDA rural development. So this is the section that I'm going to have to add next. It's finance options. So I'm going to type in fin for finance options, add. Then I'm also going to add in the appliances. So my clients actually are foodies. They want to make sure that they get a gas range because God forbid we actually use an electric one. The taste is different. They swear it. So I'm going to go down to my finance options to this USDA rural development. Now I'm down to 11 matches. Got to make sure that I get my gas range down to 5 matches. Oh boy. And let's make sure that it includes a range or oven, still at 5 matches. Hey, so it looks like I'm good. I got gated access. I got the main things that my client is interested in. Now, just as a reminder, I have not put in any other information, no price, no location, no bedroom count, bathroom count, whatever. I'm going to just go to my map real quick. I just want to use this as kind of a little bit of an object lesson. When you guys are running your searches, if you do not include any location information, it is going to put these dots all over the map. I've kind of cheated yesterday, but we've got a listing out here in Durant, Pryor. This is Eufaula, even though it technically says Stigler on here. I can't tell if that's a mapping error on their part or what. But then we've also got a couple up here in Owasso and I think Speary. Is that right? Yeah, Speary. So these listings, the little green dots that you guys are seeing here on the map, hopefully those are coming through. Actually, you know what? Again, I'm on a new monitor right now, and I hate to interrupt us. We're about to take our break anyway, but in the chat section down at the bottom, could you guys let me know, is this legible? Like, can you guys see the little green dots that are showing up here? Okay, just let me know in that little chat option. Okay. Yeah, just for some context, you guys, check this out. This is what it actually looks like if I just did no zoom whatsoever. So it's a little bit harder to see, but I tried. I think I got it zoomed in to 200%, so it should be legible. Anyway, so if I go back to my criteria and I needed to make sure that I was looking in a certain area, I can do within 20 miles of Tulsa. Go. Map area selected. Now I go into my map and I can see I got a 20-mile radius around Tulsa. Now I'm seeing only the listings that I might be interested in. But when we get back from our break, we're actually going to talk a lot more about our map search. And we're also going to be looking at the results and how to manipulate those results, how to get them out to clients, what to do with our clients, etc. So let's take a 10-minute break. It is currently not, oh, it actually just turned over to 9:58. So I will see you guys back here at 10:08. Just as a heads up, at 10:08, I'm going to ask you guys to hit that raise hand button down at the bottom. This is going to allow me to validate that you guys are still paying attention, and I can actually give you your CE credit. If you do not hit that raise hand button, I will not be able to give you CE credit. So just make sure to be back here at 10:08. All right, I'm going to put the music back on, and I'll see you guys back soon. right. Oh, there we go. Try to tell the music to stop, and it's like, nah, man, I'm good. All right. If I could get everybody to hit that raise hand button, just need to make sure that everybody's still here. Again, this is going to be related to our CE credit. So if I don't see that you guys are engaged, I won't be able to give the CE credit. Just to kind of explain some of the logic behind that. So whenever we were first getting our CE credit with the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission, they had initially decided that whenever webinars are being taught, that we would have to actually see everyone. So like actually have the cameras turned on, et cetera, et cetera. But whenever we ended up applying for our webinars, I actually asked, like, if I have all of this stuff up, I'm not going to be able to teach as well. Like I can't show the stuff on the screen as well because they have to have all of their cameras up, be watching that, or have an assistant to watch that or something. So instead, we just asked them, can we just kind of poll for participation? I mean, I know that that means that if somebody misses hearing out on, hey, hit raise hand or whatever, might not necessarily always work out, but yeah, this way we can at least give everybody the CE credit. Everybody can participate in their pajamas if they want to, and we don't care because you're here to learn, you're paying attention, easy peasy. Stephen, I think I didn't see your hand get raised, but if you wouldn't mind hitting that button, and then we'll, oh yeah, and I saw yours, Carrie, thank you though. But we'll go ahead and get started again. All right, so where we left off was going through and running some of the search functions just as the quick res was available. Now we're actually going to move gears into the map search. Now the map search is going to be completely agnostic as far as the actual property type goes. So you guys won't have to worry necessarily about, all right, this is information that's only going to be relevant if I'm looking at residential properties. But I should point out with the vacant land properties, it is actually pretty crucial to make sure that you guys are searching with the location-based information. I hate having to deliver this warning, but there is a lot of listings in our system that have been added and have, for better or worse, bad mapping data put in there. So for instance, currently we have a whole bunch of listings that are Bixby, Choteau, Elmore City, Lone Grove, Smithville, Tulsa. And where are all of these listings located? Well, we've got one that's supposed to be in, let's see, this is in Bixby, but meanwhile it's mapped up in Canada, or Kansas, excuse me. We've got one that's supposed to be in Choteau, and it's up here in Iowa. And of course, the most egregious examples besides this one in Cuba, that's actually an internal listing. We've got some in China. So just as a reminder, please, 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 I'm surprised that they haven't gotten these corrected yet, but please make sure that you guys are going through and double checking that your mapping is up to date. It's vital that we do this because if somebody's looking for this particular property and they're using a map search, they might not be able to find it. Now, of course, these are obviously some egregious examples, but occasionally it might be a block or two off, or it might be a couple miles off. So make sure that you guys are double checking your mapping. And I mention this sometimes in other classes, but just as a heads up, I mean, if you find listings that are, a little bit out of place, it's easy to just kind of blame the agent on that. But after a while, if you guys keep on noticing that listings are being put in and mapped incorrectly, you might start blaming the system, or eventually it might be that you think that the MLS is doing something wrong. But it is, again, each and every agent's individual responsibility to make sure that you guys have your listings up to date and accurate. Because we can't police every single listing. We've got 3,000 listings that are active at this moment, and those will all be gone by a couple months from now. So make sure that you guys are going through that process and getting that done correctly. But when you guys get to the map, The criteria that you guys have entered before will narrow down your search results dramatically. But if you guys don't put in any search criteria at all, the map is going to fill up with a bunch of clumps of the listings in that area. So for instance, if I click on this clump here in Tulsa, it's going to zoom me in. Click on the clump in Midtown, keep on zooming in, keep on whittling it down by zooming into each clump until finally there's 500 or less listings on the map at a time. You can keep on zooming in until you find the specific area that you might be interested in. So like, let's say I wanted to do this particular spot right here. Now there's some search functions that we can use to at least draw a shape in the area that we want. We've got a radius tool, a little rectangle tool, a polygon tool, and then a freehand tool. Now the radius tool is very simple. So for instance, let's say that I got a client that works over here. So they're just off of 15th. They want to make sure that they don't have to drive too far to work, or they might be able to walk or bike or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw the center of the radius. So I clicked my draw radius button. It's highlighted in yellow. And then I'm going to click and drag from the central location. As I start to drag, you'll notice that it's actually going to show me how far the radius is until I get to wherever it is that I wanted it to go, so 1 mile. Now we went from the 3,000 listings, and now we are down to 37. It's excluded all of the properties that are outside this shape. Now we also have the option to do other shapes as well. So we've got our rectangle tool. I'm actually just going to add the rectangle tool here. So I'm going to say, let's just do from Cherry Street over all the way till we get to Denver. Go. So again, this is just a click and drag. So I dragged from one corner diagonally to the other corner and just whatever shape within there. Now we can modify these shapes pretty easily. So if I hold my cursor over the edge of one of these radius tools or radius shapes, I can click and drag to expand that search out further. The same thing goes with our rectangle tool. If you click and drag on one of the sides, it's only going to move that side. And if you click on one of the corners, it'll allow you to move both sides at the same time. Now, I also wanted to point out we've got our polygon tool. Polygon tool is actually the one that I think is probably the most useful. I'm going to hit the clear all shapes to get rid of the shapes that I have. Zoom out just a little bit, and I'm going to draw what my wife considers Midtown. So I'm going to hit the draw polygon tool. I'm going to take Peoria, click at the starting point, and at the moment, just to be clear, because I can't show you guys this physically, I am not dragging. So I have not clicked and dragged. Right now, I'm just moving my mouse, and you can see this little faint blue line that's kind of following my cursor. The easiest way that I've found to try and explain this is kind of like one of those conspiracy theory boards from back in the day. I don't know if you guys have seen any movies with that stuff recently, but where they have like the little push pins, and then there's that string that they're putting to the next push pin. So right now, I've added in a push pin up at the top here, and I'm pulling my string to where I'm going to drop my next push pin. So as soon as I click, it drops that corner, and effectively, again, I've dropped that push pin. Click, I've added another corner, still drawn my string, push, there we go. And then I'm going to come back up here along Sheridan, come back along the highway here. There we go. And then just click on the very the very first pin that I dropped, and it'll close off the area. So this is roughly what my wife considers Midtown. Just an interesting fact about all of these shapes that we've been drawing, there's always going to be a little red dot that's been following us. There will always be a red dot for every shape. We can make modifications to our shapes by clicking on the blue sides, but this red dot is actually going to allow us to see the delete shape and exclude this shape. So let's say that we ended up drawing our map of Midtown here, but they did not want to be anywhere near one of the thoroughfares. So for instance, this one right here that's really close to, what is this, 11th Street, is that right? Yeah. That's not something that they want to actually be near, so they're just going to end up having me draw a rectangle around 11th Street. So right about there. And then I'm going to hold my cursor over that red dot and say, exclude this shape. What that does is it says this area right here is a no-go zone. And again, I can make adjustments to this if need be. So if I find out that there's more properties that are also getting a lot of noise there, I can also change that there. We'll do the same thing to Harvard. So again, I'm just going to click and drag, a little bit too noisy near that street. So just hold my cursor over there, exclude this shape. Again, just to use my wife as an example for this, she grew up in Stigler, which I just mentioned earlier, but very, very, very quiet town. So when we got to Tulsa, she ended up having a lot of trouble falling asleep at night because it was just way too loud. So once we got moved into a neighborhood that was a little bit quieter, much better sleep, these kinds of things could actually be crucial decisions for your clients. Just make sure that you're keeping this in mind if they ever describe an area that they don't want or some sound complaints or something like that. All right. Now, it's important also to point out that when we've added these shapes, I can always go back to my criteria and now add in, let's say that we wanted to do 200 to 300,000, go back to my map, and now I'll see only those 30 results. Or if I wanted to do 3 or more bedrooms, I'm down to 28 matches, 2 or more bathrooms, 20 matches, make sure that I've got at least 1 full bathroom in each. That's not going to change much, and at least 1 half bath. Now we're down to 8 matches. And again, I can go to my results and see all my results immediately. I can also go to my map and make sure that none of these are close to any thoroughfares. Easy peasy. All right. In addition to our shape options on the map, I also have the option to add in some additional layers. Now the layers are going to boil down to the parcel information, which if we zoom in close enough, you guys will start seeing these little gray outlines around each of the parcels. Always make sure that that's left. We also have an option to add in the zip code lines, city lines, county lines, school district lines, FEMA flood zones. Neighborhoods doesn't actually do too much. There's not too many neighborhoods that are codified. And then of course the Tulsa flood zone lines as well. So just to zoom out so I can show you guys how incredibly cluttered this can get. There we go. I mean, it's having to go through and add in a whole bunch of extra information. We've got the blue from the zip codes, the green from the school district line. We've got a green line over here that's actually the Tulsa city limits. We've got the overlay that shows the FEMA flood maps. This map can get very cluttered very quickly. So what I usually recommend people to do is just do parcel, because again, that pretty much needs to be left all the time, and then just add in 1 or 2 of these at a time. Now, the flood zone information does have a little bit more to do than any of the other options. So I wanted to just show you guys how this works. The flood zone information is coming over directly from FEMA, and it's actually going to have the official FEMA designations on here, which is being clarified with this legend down at the bottom. The orange that you guys see with the little X information here, this is actually indicating that this is all going to be safe. So this is just outside of any special flood zones. The yellow and the purple, pink, purple color, lilac or whatever, those colors are indicating that there is a flood risk. Now, the 500-year floodplain is actually indicating where water will rest if there's a 500-year flood. Now, this is effectively a prediction of the likelihood of something happening. So like once every 500 years, we see that historically or geologically, there's been a flood of a certain magnitude. So that would actually raise the water this far based on the geography of the location. Just a little bit of a heads up. We had back in oh, is this actually the property I was looking for? That's handy. We had back in 2019 a pretty significant flood. I happen to know the people that live on this property right here, 1373 Riverside Drive. and they ended up having the floodwaters come pretty close to their house. Now, initially, when they had moved in, FEMA had actually drawn the flood line in front of their property. Actually changed the thickness of that because that was a little bit too thin. So they had initially drawn the flood map pretty much directly in front of where their building was on their property. When the floodwaters came in 2019, that's almost exactly where they stopped, is where the FEMA flood map had been just a couple of years before. Then they ended up moving it back. And then, of course, the really significant flood in 2019 kind of proved that that actually was pretty good. Either that or that was pretty close to what a 500-year flood would look like. Anyway, I'm going to clear that all off. There we go. Go back to the mouse. All right. So that's it for our layers. There are some additional options on here. Explore those at your leisure. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. We do have a Tulsa flood zone section. This might be worth taking a look at if you guys are in Tulsa, because these maps were actually redrawn based on some of the flooding that had occurred recently. They actually literally added this Tulsa County flood zone information after the 2019 flood. It was significant enough that the city of Tulsa, the county, or Tulsa County, excuse me, ended up deciding that they were going to do an official estimation to ensure that they knew where the flooding would occur the next time we got such a significant amount of rain. But all right, go ahead and zoom out a little bit. See that information there. I'm going to go ahead and clear that off. If you guys do end up trying to add layers, so for instance, I wanted to see the flood zones, but I'm too far out, it will give you a little indication. Now, the last button on the top of the screen here is going to be the recenter. So let's say that I have actually scrolled pretty far away, and then I need to get back to where my search results are. I can click on this recenter button to bring me back to wherever my shape was or wherever the bulk of my listings that I had searched for were. So for instance, if I had a specific area that I'd searched and it wasn't just by the map, when I click on results, or excuse me, click on the map, it's going to zoom me in to where I can see all of those at the same time. So if I scroll away and hit recenter, it's not just recentering to the shape, it's recentering to the results. Now let's go ahead and start looking at what the results page looks like. So again, we talked already about how the first two numbers of the MLS number are always going to be the year that this listing was entered. And then the remaining 5 digits are going to be the listings number. Now, just in case you guys might have made an assumption here, we have not had 20,000 listings put into the system this year. There's a lot of listings that end up becoming effectively just trash data, like incomplete listings or listings that were being entered and then they decided not to, the deal fell through, whatever. So that's not an accurate number of how many listings are put in. I would probably say it's closer to like maybe 18,000, still a pretty substantial number, but it's usually not always that high. Anyway, over to the right of our MLS number, we have a view photos option. This is a quick way to just kind of get in and take a look at the property. We also have a view map option. This is going to give us a pop-up where we can go through and actually add in those layers that we saw earlier. So if I wanted to see what the flood map was showing, looks like we're in the clear on that. Or if I wanted to maybe change this over to the terrain view, see if there's any terrain nearby. This is Oklahoma, so there's not really much terrain anywhere. Sorry, I'm from Colorado, so everything looks flat here. We also have a satellite image. The satellite image is a really handy tool, and there's also the default option of showing the labels, but you can turn those off if need be. You can even turn off your parcel lines so that you can just get the actual satellite imagery with no extra information on there. But make sure to leave the parcel lines on there by default, and I would usually recommend leaving the labels on there as well so you actually know where this is located. All right. I'm going to switch back over to the map view. Much easier to load that data. We also have that same exact function open up whenever you click on the address itself. So notice the address is a link. You click on that, and it pulls up your map. To the far right, we're actually going to have a history tab. Now, this history option is going to show any and every listing for this property, as well as any public records coming over from the county. Some listings are going to be pretty sparse as far as the information that's on there, especially the further away from Tulsa that you get. I wanted to just mention this just in case any of you guys happen to work outside of Tulsa, but we've slowly been adding in other MLSs into ours. So we currently represent the Greater Tulsa Association of Realtors, which merged with Bartlesville a while ago. We have the Southern Oklahoma Association of Realtors, which is directly south of us. That's the McAllister area, McAllister, Eufaula, etc. We've got the association below them, Texoma, and to the west, we've got the ADA board, and very recently, the Southern Oklahoma Board of Realtors as well. So there's a lot of associations that are actually a part of our MLS now, but since they had their own MLSs and we only got a limited amount of historical data from them, you may end up finding that if you guys are working outside of Tulsa pretty far, that there might not be a lot of listing data going back too far. But as you can see, even in ADA, we had them as a part of our MLS back in 2016. The public record information down here at the bottom is not just going to show any of the sales as well. You guys might end up noticing that there's the sales information, but there's also going to be any nominal changes included on here as well. So for instance, if Eric Hall moved this to a trust, we would actually see the seller be Eric Hall, the buyer be whatever the trust he moved it in. And since there's no sales price, it'll just have a little Y indicated under here where it says this is nominal change. And then also they have the mortgage history information on there as well. The next icon over is going to be the start a transaction option. This is a quick and easy way to just dive directly into transaction desk. Now, transaction desk should automatically include the name of the transaction as the address that you're pulling from. And then it's also going to grab the MLS number so that when you guys initially create this transaction, so let's say I'm doing a residential sale, create, it's going to pull as much information as it can from the listing data, put that into your transaction, including the photo, as we can see here. Close these out. And when I get over here to the contacts, it's already got all of the contact information for the individual that's actually listing the property. And if they had uploaded their disclosures, it'll also include the disclosures for that property as well. So transaction desk is great. We have classes on that if you guys are interested, and you guys can always get in contact with us if you have questions about it. Now, as I mentioned, disclosures have to be uploaded into the listings. And we just saw that whenever we ended up creating a transaction with one of those properties details, it grabbed the documents. So again, the disclosures or whatever else the listing agent had added. When you click on the View Documents button, you'll be able to get a preview of those, and you can also download those if need be. So if you guys wanted to save those and show those to a potential buyer or whatever the case may be, you guys can do that. The next icon over, you notice this row is actually empty right now. This is going to show the open houses that are available. Let me actually clear some of this criteria out. And let's expand this out to 500. No open houses. Let's try Tulsa. That's way too many. Let's do 400. I can work with that. Hey, there we go. We got an open house here. Open houses are fairly simple. You guys can add that even if you don't have add edit permission. All you need to do is just give it a date, a time. When you click on the MLS number, it'll also show some further details, whether this is a virtual open house or a regular open house, whether or not it includes the most important thing that you guys could ever include at an open house, which is refreshments. And then we also have a virtual tour link. Just as a heads up, the virtual tours, as I mentioned before, do have to be unbranded. So just make sure that whenever you guys are going through and adding in your virtual tour, whoever it is that provided the virtual tour information should have added in there whether or not there's one that's going to be the branded version and one that's going to be the unbranded version. We have to have the unbranded version. It is something that we have to go through and manually double check these. Very often the vendors that are actually providing these will make sure that they make it very obvious which one you're supposed to be uploading. But they come in a whole bunch of different forms. This one's just effectively a preview of the property. Others might be that virtual dollhouse kind of situation, if you guys have ever seen the Matterport stuff. But if you guys would like to take a look at those, you just click on the little link to them right over here to the right, and you guys can check those out. Oh, here we go. This is the one that I was looking for. I really like this virtual dollhouse thing. I think it's one of the coolest things that you guys can do, but it's definitely one of those situations where the client really has to be willing to let you get a very, very good look at whatever their stuff is that they have in their house. Like this very, very interesting sculpture that I didn't realize was there. Anyway, close out of that. Yeah, virtual tours are on there. We also have a link here for the Realtor Property Resource. Now, if you guys have not had any experience with RPR, which by the way, is actually a link here on your MLS portal. This is the National Association of Realtors app. Now, what this is going to do, if you guys click on this link here, is actually load the information for this particular property within RPR. Now, RPR has a huge, huge amount of information that's available on here. I should point out that there's also going to be some reports that you guys can create. So if you guys are interested in learning about RPR, I cannot stress this enough. This is one of the best tools that you guys have available to you as an agent or broker even. There's a lot of broker tools in here as well. So if you guys like creating reports for your clients, or if you guys just want to learn more about the property or the area or the schools in the area, or find out what living there is like, we've got a AARP livability index. Of course, this is a relatively nice house in a really nice area of Tulsa, so this is pretty positive review. It's average, of course, but it's better than most of the other places in Tulsa. But that's here on the RPR link. You'll notice that that's actually available for every single property that we have in our system, the same way that you guys should see that for every history link and every started transaction link. Now, the final two buttons here are actually going to be related to the tax records. We've got the realist value map, which is effectively just the realist version of Zillow's Zestimate. And then we've got the realist reports, which just pulls up the details about this particular property from the perspective of realist. So if you guys are interested in that, there's a couple black icons over to the right here. Now, once we actually get into one of the listings, we're going to circle back and make some adjustments to our search screen. But when we get into the listings, we're actually going to find the exact same icons down here at the bottom with some extras. So we've got our photos button, our map button, the history, then we've got a realist tax lookup, the realist map, which shows where it's physically located, what the neighborhood is like from a demographic perspective, and then in those same value map and the realist reports, the find system actually got renamed, but the name is actually very long, so we just left it labeled find in our system. It is now the Realtor.com professional search. And since that's a mouthful, we decided not to actually quote that on here. But we also have the documents again, so I can get into the disclosures, virtual tour, a data co-op view, which hardly anybody uses for good reason. We've got our open house, RPR, and a Sentry key and super key box in case it's one or the other. And of course, again, that start a transaction option. If we do have a property that has an open house, as this one does, you'll see what the most recent changes were directly under the icons, and then also the next open house is right below that. When we're looking at the listing information, we can scroll through the photos, we can open this up and scroll through the photos again. We also have a section down here for the additional rooms. This is where people can quote to you what the rooms are that are available and tell you where they are located in the house, as well as what their amenities are. Now, this information is not required. It would be kind of hard to require it just in case there's certain rooms that are missing, but effectively, if you guys have access to this information, always make sure that that's included. The main example that I can give you guys is, for instance, this master bedroom being on the first floor would be a critical decision for my parents. My mom has pretty severe arthritis. She would not be able to go up and down the stairs all the time. So having the master bedroom on the first floor is vital to her. And so when they're actually searching for properties, this is exactly what they would be looking for, is that the master bedroom is on the first floor. They will not look at any properties that have a difference in that. So if you guys have information, make sure that it's on your listings, because you never know who it is that's actually going to have that as a deal breaker for their buying decision. In addition to our basic details about the property, down towards the bottom is going to be all the information that's only going to be accessible through the MLS. It's going to show all of the details about the agent. This will go out to the public, but now we've got office phone number, contact phone number, whether or not they'll allow broker delivery of information. We've got the company OREC license number, whether it's limited service, a short sale, whether it's a foreclosure, blah, 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 blah. We've got our broker remarks. Sometimes broker remarks might include like what the gate code is to get in to take a showing. This might include where the offers are supposed to go. There's a huge amount of information that's just not meant to be seen by the public. So make sure that you guys are showing only the information that you need to your clients, and oftentimes just sending it by email or printing it off might be the better option. There is a tax button up here at the top that allows you guys to jump over to the tax information. It's going to try and grab it directly from the tax record for this particular property. If it cannot find it because the agent didn't add the tax parcel number to the listing, it's going to try and default over to searching for the property by the address that was provided. There's also a section here for photos. Again, this is the same way that we just saw before. You just click on the photo, you can zoom in and see it. We have a history of the property. Again, there was a whole button for this earlier, but there's a tab for it once you're looking at the listing. We have the parcel map, which allows us to see where the property is physically located from a satellite view, see the parcel dimensions, and then the contextual view where we can actually zoom in, zoom out, add the extra layers that we want, etc. Back up to the top, we've got our flood map as well. Now, one of the important things about the flood map tab is that this is actually allowing us to see the official designation according to the Tulsa County records. Any county should actually have some of this information put in there, and it'll give you guys a little bit more official guidance than just, let's say, looking at the map and seeing that it's in the orange. This is actually indicating the exact location of where the flood map is, or where the flood zones are. All right. Now, once we're done taking a look at a particular listing, there's a button up here at the top that says single line display. This will actually return us back to where we were before. And if I need to click on another listing, I click on it, scroll through the photos, et cetera, then back to single line display to bring us back to this page. Now, there's a couple of extra options that you guys can use to kind of customize the search display. So for instance, if I wanted to maybe rearrange some things, like right now I want to make sure that the address is actually the first thing I see after the status. So I'm just going to click and drag from the address header to reposition that into the right location. I'm going to move my subtype over. And now I have it laid out in a way that makes a little bit more sense to me. We also have the option to include or remove columns. So up here at the top, instead of just clicking and dragging to move things around, I'm actually just going to do a simple click. This gives me an option to remove the column. So let's say that, for instance, I always run my searches with the house option. When I go into my results, all of these are going to be houses. This entire column is now redundant. So I'm going to click on the gray space and then just do remove column. This makes my entire display screen a little bit more dense. I don't have to worry about it as much. And then I also wanted to add in what the acreage is. So I'm going to click again on this blank space up at the top, but instead of doing remove column, I'm going to do insert column. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit and do acres, but as you guys can see, this is the massive list that we saw when we were looking at the additional fields earlier. So I want to just add in acres. I can also search for whatever it is that I'm looking for and then just hit apply. Now, when we add things onto here, we have not actually changed what the sort method is. Right now, it's still going to be preferring the initial search sort methods. Over to the far left, we have a little arrow. It's this nice thick arrow. Then we've got a little bit thinner arrow, and then a little bit thinner beyond that. This thickest arrow is indicating the primary sort method, secondary sort method, and then finally the price. So all of our listings that we're looking for are active. Again, remember that's our default option when we're running a search. The school district section is next. So we see it starting off with this one that was over in Bixby, and then we see Jenks, Tulsa. Now, next is going to be our price. Now we see the one that is in Bixby, no price sorting needs to be done there because there's only one. But with Jinx, it actually starts off with 639 and then goes all the way down to the very last one here at 759. Then it starts back over again when we get down to Tulsa. And then it starts increasing until we finally get to Union. Now, if we wanted to make some changes to this, it's really simple. Instead of clicking on the gray area like we had just been doing, where we actually can move things around and pull up this pop-up, we're going to actually just click on the label for the particular sort field that I want. So for instance, I'm going to sort first by year built. Notice what happens is that the price option disappeared, and now the school district is actually the third thinnest line, status is second thinnest. If I wanted to make sure that the bedroom count was next, I can move that. Then I'm going to do acres next, just so that we can really see this illustration. So again, I did built, bedroom, acres. All of these are pointing the other direction down. I can switch these if I need to. But what I've actually done is I've effectively turned acres into the primary, bedroom into the secondary, and built into the tertiary sort. So again, just if you go in reverse order, so I'm going to say built, garage, half bath, full bath. Notice it's just following me as I click through these. That's the easiest way for me to try and explain that. But if you guys want to make sure that this particular layout that you have, like if you adjusted where things were or added in extra columns, or even just did something like changing what the sort was, you can change your default options so that the next time you run a search with residential properties, I can see this exact same layout. So what it's going to do is this little gear icon up at the top, we do set current display, sort order, and count per page as the starting default. Again, what that means is that it's going to take all of the information that we see on here and then turn this into my default. So the next time I run something, it's going to show it in this exact same layout, with this exact same sort, with the same amount of number on the page. We also have the option to customize these and save them as a specific copy. If you guys do end up wanting that, you guys can always go through and actually customize those. We do cover that in our advanced matrix and realist class, but I just wanted to mention it today. If you guys are interested in that, you guys can save these as a custom name and use those again in the future using this drop down right here. So you can see the ones that with that my prefix are actually indicating the ones that I've created. The good news is that once you guys have made a change to the default, you don't have to worry about this reverting if you guys sign back in again. But if you guys do decide that maybe I was a little overzealous with my customizations, I probably need to make some changes to this, you can always hit this reset to the system search defaults, and it'll reset everything back to the way that it was when you guys initially started searching in Matrix. Now, down at the very bottom of the screen, so beyond our sort functions, et cetera, there was the actions, refine, save, and carts. Now, we're not going to be discussing the refine or carts right now. We do have some options on our YouTube channel to learn about those. But under the actions, we've got an email, print, CMA, directions, export, quick CMA, and the showing time button are all grayed out right now. If I hold my cursor over these, it'll actually very handily tell me what the problem is, which again, since I'm on this big monitor, it's making the text way too small. It says, please check one item. If I check one of these checkboxes over to the left of the listings, all of these options just suddenly opened up for me. Now, I've got an email button down here. When I click on email, this is going to allow me to type in either just a plain email address. So if I just wanted to say john@john.com, perfect. Send that off to him, easy peasy. I do not recommend doing this. If you guys just type in an email address, what it's doing is it's effectively sending a one-off to the client where you're only going to allow them to see the listing, but they cannot interact with it at all. In fact, it'll actually give them an error message if they try to run a search or save anything as a favorite, where it'll ask them to let you know that you need to add them as a contact in order for them to be able to do anything in the One Home system. So what I suggest to people to do is go ahead and hit this Create New Contact button. And this is already going to include information you've got from them. If you have their email address, more than likely you've already got their first and last name. So you might as well just put them all in there. And that way you guys can go back. And when you guys run your email, you can just type in the name of the person that you want to send this off to. So say Mike. Send it to Mike and his wife. Put in the subject. Check these out, or check this out. And down towards the bottom, you guys can even see my signature that I put in earlier. Again, that was under the settings section that we did that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit send on this. That gets sent off to the client. And now if I go into my refine option, I can actually see the email was sent off to him on a certain day. But again, we're not going to explore this too much. Next, I want to actually address the save option. Now, the save option includes a new saved search. This is going to allow me to save the information that I've actually searched by right now. So any of the criteria, any of the map options, all of that information will be saved so that I can jump back into those results, the live results, every single time. Now, when you click on New Saved Search, the only thing that's actually required on here is the search, is the search name. You do have the option to add this as a contact search. So if you guys have this set up for a specific individual, you guys can save it that way. As always, anytime you guys see a space to include a contact, you'll also have an option to create a new contact. There is an enable as a favorite search on the home tab option. You guys can have up to 25 searches on that home page that we saw earlier. And it's also going to clarify all of your criteria to make sure that if you accidentally had something that was limiting your search, you can go back and change that. But there's another option that I think is going to be a lot more practical for people when you guys are working with a specific buyer. This new auto email option is going to take whatever the criteria were that they had initially been searched by and turn that into an email system that's going to see any of the listings that get added that happen to match those criteria, and then just immediately send an email out to the client to let them know that the new listing has been added. So what that looks like is that I'm going to have to put in a contact here. So again, I'm going to just go ahead and use Mike and Loretta. There's again a new contact button. Like I can blind carbon copy myself as well. This is a great way to make sure that you guys see whenever a client has been sent information, as well as being able to just, I don't know, double check what the information was that they were sent. And then we also can include the subject. And then there's going to be a welcome email. It's going to go out to them, let them know that, all right, here's what's going to happen. We're going to be sending you emails. Make sure that whenever you see these, you go check out what the listings are that we've sent to you. And then there's also going to be a recurring email as well. Now, this recurring email is going to be the text that's actually sent out whenever a new listing has been added that matches their criteria. Again, it allows you to see what your signature is. You can edit this if you'd like to. shows what your criteria was that you had initially searched by, and then it gives you a couple extra options down here towards the bottom. Now, the only setting option that I would recommend that you guys take a look at is this concierge mode. Now, what the concierge mode does is effectively says, anytime a new listing shows up that matches the criteria of this search, instead of just automatically sending it to the client, it's actually going to ask you to verify that each of the listings that are being included are good listings for that client. An example that I actually heard was somebody had been working with a client and they had some very specific needs. So I guess the main thing that they wanted was that the kitchen was facing a certain direction, and they would not bother looking at the house unless that was the feature that was available to them. So it had to be looking, I guess, east or something like that, so that they could watch the sunrise. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, whatever it was, they needed the direction of the kitchen to be facing a certain way. When the agent had initially set up the auto email, they just had it set up with the rest of the criteria besides this apparent deal breaker. And then they ended up getting an angry email back saying, hey, I didn't want to see this property. This was, the kitchen was facing north. I'm never going to be able to see the sun, whatever. So what they ended up doing is they enabled concierge mode so that anytime a new listing happened to be added, they would be able to go through, double check the photos, or maybe get in contact with the agent, and then send that particular listing on. Now, what that sounds like to me is just a saved search with extra steps, but in this case, that might have actually been necessary. So that enable concierge mode could serve a very good purpose. I have heard other complaints about it, or other things about it that are complaints. If you guys end up sending only a certain number of listings out to a client and they go and run the search themselves and they find more properties because you've excluded the ones that they might not be interested in due to the conversations you've had or your experience as a real estate professional, whatever, they may end up thinking that, oh, well, I found more listings than my agent did, so I must not need them, which isn't true. You guys are professionals. You guys have been trying to help them out, but they didn't even know that that extra work was being done because they thought this was automated. So be that as it may, there's an option there for it if you need it. There is also an ASAP option, which allows you guys to send the emails off as soon as listings are added. It's going to be within 15 minutes of the listing being put into Matrix. There's a daily option, which sends out either in the morning, the evening, or you can do both. The morning times are 8 a.m., the evening times are 6 p.m. So it'll grab any listings that happened between those time frames and send those off during those time frames. You can also set this up to only show during certain times of the week, certain times of the day. And then there's also the people that are probably not going to buy a property. You get those monthly ones. But who knows? But that's about it. I'm going to go back up to our My Matrix section, and let's take a look at our contacts. Now, the contacts section is very basic. What it's going to allow you guys to see is all the contacts that you've added. When you click on any of their names, it's going to break down into the details of the contact. There's an edit button so that you guys can go back and maybe add in phone numbers or change what their category is, if they're a buyer, seller, whatever, put in their current address, what their salutation is, blah, 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 blah. But it also allows us to see any of the auto emails that you've set up for them. And actually, let me find a contact that has an auto email. Oh, I don't have any active ones right now. Let's do this one though. I've got a saved search for him. So the auto emails that you guys have set up will show here. You guys can always go back, make changes to the criteria in case they let you know, well, this is including things I don't want. You can cancel them out in case maybe they need to look in a different area, whatever. There's also the carts options. You guys can choose to add any listings to carts. Again, we have a video that's going to be included on email whenever we get that done, or whenever we get done with the webinar. You can include any CMA reports that you've created. You can see all of the emails that you guys have ever sent to that client, even if it was just like one-off emails where it was just a listing or two. You can see any of the searches that you've saved for them, as well as any searches that they have conducted on their end. So whenever the client has actually gotten signed in and used the one-home search, you'll be able to see those. And then finally, you also have the reverse prospecting option. Reverse prospecting is actually directly tied to the auto email function. So whenever I end up sending an auto email to, in this case, George Foreman, it's one of his kids. Which one? Who knows? They're all named George Foreman. But whenever I sent off one of the emails with the auto email to George, the agent whose listing was sent to George will receive a notice that me as the agent has a client that might be interested. Now, just to be clear, because this kind of get a little bit confusing explaining it on the first try, when you guys have the reverse prospecting set up for a client, this means that the other agents will see that you have a client. They do not see the client's name, email, what they're interested in, what other listings they're interested in, etc. All they know is that you have a client that's interested in one of their properties or might be interested just because they had an auto email to them. That's it. So I think it's a really useful function. We turned that on in August of 2018. It was turned on August 1st. We have somebody that ended up making a sale on August 2nd. Now, again, this is this is from a long time ago. The market is acting way faster now. So if you guys are trying to find another way to maybe get some leads, get some contacts, get some interest in your property, the reverse prospecting is a great way to go. And there's actually a whole section that just deals with just that. So if you guys are interested, you guys can take a look at that. But we have a whole bunch of video tutorials on our YouTube channel. If you guys have any interest in extra tutorials or guides, anything like that, you can always get in contact with us at the service desk. But don't forget, when you guys get signed into the MLS system, there is a link there called support, right down here, that has a whole bunch of articles as well. But reach out to us if you guys have any questions, problems, suggestions, anything at all. If I could get you guys to hit that raise hand button one more time, or just hit me up in chat, let me know that you guys are here. Just want to make sure that everybody's here, and I'll be able to give you guys the CE credit. But thank you guys again so much for joining us today. I'm going to stick around for a minute if you have any questions that you didn't get to ask while we were going through class, but I will hopefully see you guys soon. Stay safe, and I will see you in the future. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close up shop. Have a good one, guys. Stay safe.